The cargo bay smelled like metal and engine oil. Princess Yira stood at the entrance and felt disgust rise in her throat. This was not how a royal should travel. This was not how the third princess of the Veloci Empire should cross the stars. Her royal cruiser had broken down 3 days ago. Some kind of engine failure that her engineers could not fix quickly. And so here she was, forced aboard a dirty merchant ship called the Horizon Drift. The ship was old. The walls had rust spots. The floors were sticky in places she did not want to think about. "This is an insult," she said to Commander Rova, who walked beside her. He was tall, blue-skinned like all Veloci, with 4 eyes that showed his constant alertness. "My father will hear about this. It is only temporary, Princess," Rova said. His voice was calm, but she could see he was also unhappy. "We will reach Veloci Prime in 12 days. Then you can forget this ever happened." Yura was about to respond when she saw him. A human male was working in the cargo bay. He was lifting heavy crates and stacking them against the wall. His skin was brown from sun exposure, and his black hair was messy with sweat. He wore simple gray clothes that marked him as a low worker, a cargo handler. The lowest job on any ship? He looked up when she entered. His eyes met hers for just a moment. They were dark brown, almost black, and there was something in them she could not read. Then he looked away and continued his work as if she did not matter. Yura felt anger flash through her. Did this primitive creature not know who she was? "Human," she called out. Her voice echoed in the cargo bay. The man stopped working. He turned to face her and waited. He did not bow. He did not lower his eyes. He just waited. "Do you know who I am?" Yura asked. "Yes," he said. His voice was quiet and calm. "You are Princess Yura of the Veloci Empire. Third in line to the throne? Then why do you not show proper respect?" The human was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I meant no disrespect, Princess. I was simply working." Commander Rova stepped forward. "You should kneel when speaking to royalty, creature. Your kind should know your place." Something flickered in the human's eyes. It was there and gone so fast that Yura almost missed it. But for just a second, he did not look like a cargo handler. He looked like something else entirely. Something dangerous? Then it was gone. He lowered his head slightly. "Of course. My apologies," Rova laughed. "Humans, such weak creatures. I am amazed your species survived long enough to reach space." The human said nothing. He simply returned to his work, lifting crates that looked far too heavy for his lean frame. Yura watched him for a moment longer. There was something strange about him. The way he moved was too smooth, too controlled. Most workers moved with tired, sloppy motions. This one moved like every action was planned. She shook her head. She was imagining things. He was just a human, a primitive from a primitive world. Over the next 2 days, Yura learned the names of the human crew. The cargo handler was called Tai Ho. There was also an engineer named Min Ho, who had a quiet face and clever hands, and a medic named Hannah, a small woman with gentle eyes and a soft voice. They were unremarkable, forgettable, exactly what she expected from humans. On the 3rd night, Yura was bored. The ship had no entertainment worthy of her status, so she decided to create her own. "Commander Rova," she said during dinner in the common area, "I wish to see a sparring match." Rova smiled. "Of course, Princess. Between which of my guards?" "No," Yura said. She looked at the human crew sitting at a nearby table. They were eating quietly, keeping to themselves. "I want one of your guards to spar with a human." "For entertainment?" The room went silent. The Veloci guards laughed. The humans stopped eating. Rova turned to the human table. "Well, which of you soft creatures wishes to test yourself against a true warrior?" None of the humans moved. Minho kept his eyes on his food. Hannah looked down at her hands. Tai-Ho continued eating slowly, as if he had not heard. Yura felt satisfaction spread through her chest. No volunteers? How disappointing, but not surprising. Humans are known as cowards throughout the galaxy. Tai-Ho finally looked up. His face showed nothing. Fighting for entertainment is not something we do, princess. 'Cause you are afraid, Rova said. Because it serves no purpose, Taiho replied. Rova stepped closer to him. I could order you to fight. This is a velo-psy-contracted ship. You must obey. Taiho set down his eating utensil. He looked up at Rova, and again, Yura saw that strange flicker in his eyes. You could order it, but I would still decline. And then you would have to explain to the ship's captain why you disrupted his crew for a game? Rova's four eyes narrowed. For a moment, Yura thought he would strike the human, but then he laughed and stepped back. Not worth my time. Cowards are not worth anyone's time. The moment passed. Dinner continued. But Yura noticed that Taiho's hands had never shaken. His breathing had never changed. When Rova had threatened him, he had shown no fear at all. Strange for a coward. Later that night, Yura could not sleep. She walked through the ship's corridors, exploring. She found herself near the cargo bay and heard soft sound from inside. She looked through the window in the door. Taiho was there alone. He was doing something she did not understand at first. He was moving through the space between the crates, his body flowing like water. His hands struck invisible enemies. His feet swept across the floor in patterns that looked like dancing but felt like something else. Fighting. He was practicing fighting. But not like any fighting she had ever seen. Veloci martial arts were direct and powerful. This was different. This was patient, clever, deadly. He moved like a predator. Yura watched for 10 minutes without breathing loudly. Every motion Taiho made was perfect. Every strike was aimed at places that would cause maximum damage. Eyes, throat, joints, weak points. This was not the training of a cargo handler. This was the training of a killer. Finally, Taiho stopped. He stood still in the center of the cargo bay, breathing slowly. Then he turned his head toward the door where Yura was hiding. He could not possibly see her through the dark window, but his eyes found exactly where she stood, and he smiled. Just slightly. Just enough. Then he walked away into the shadows of the cargo bay and disappeared. Yura returned to her quarters, their heart beating fast. She told herself she had imagined it. Humans were weak. Humans were primitive. Everyone knew this. But that night, she dreamed of dark eyes that held something ancient and tired. Something that had seen death many times and was no longer afraid of it. She dreamed of a predator, wearing the mask of prey, and for the first time in her life, Princess Yura wondered if everything she knew about humans was wrong. 3 days passed since. Yura had seen Taiho training in the cargo bay. She told no one what she had witnessed. Part of her still believed she had imagined it. Humans were not warriors. Every species in the galaxy knew this as simple fact, but she could not stop watching them. The human crew fascinated her now in ways she did not understand. She began to notice small details that she had missed before. Strange habits. Odd behaviors. Things that did not fit the image of a weak speciesman. The engineer never walked into a room without checking every exit first. His eyes would sweep the space in less than a second, finding doors, windows, air vents, anything that could serve as an escape route. He did it so naturally that most people would never notice. But Yura was watching now, and she noticed Hannah, the medic, always carried a small bag on her belt. Yura had assumed it contained medical supplies. But one day she saw Hannah open it, and inside were not just bandages and medicine. There were also small blades, a thin wire, items that had nothing to do with healing and everything to do with survival. And Taiho, he never sat with his back to a door, never, not once. Whenever he entered a room, he would choose a seat that let him see every entrance. His body was always relaxed, but his eyes were always moving, always watching, always ready. Yira approached him one morning in the ship's small dining area. He was eating breakfast alone, his back against the wall, facing the door. Of course, may I sit? She asked. Taiho looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded toward the seat across from him. Yura sat down. She studied his face. He looked ordinary. Just a young man with tired eyes and calloused hands. Nothing special. Nothing frightening. You are very paranoid, she said. All of you humans on this ship. You act like danger is always near. Taiho took a bite of his food. He chewed slowly before answering. Paranoia is a luxury, princess. Preparation is survival. What does that mean? It means that paranoid people fear things that might not happen. Prepared people are ready for things that will happen. He looked at her with those dark eyes. There is a difference. Yura leaned back in her chair. What are you preparing for? We are on a simple merchant ship traveling through safe space. What danger could possibly find us here? Taiho smiled slightly. Safe space. Yes. He did not sound convinced. Before Yura could respond, the ship's alarm suddenly rang through the corridors. Not a danger alarm. A different sound. A signal, Captain Doyen's voice came through the speakers. All senior crew to the bridge. We have detected a distress beacon. Yura stood quickly and made her way to the bridge. Taiho followed behind her, silent as a shadow. The bridge was small and cramped. Captain Doyun, an older human with gray hair and a serious face, stood at the center console. Commander Rova was already there, his 4 eyes fixed on the screen. What have we found? Yura asked. A ship, Captain Doyan said. Dead in space about 2 hours from our position? Their distress beacon activated 3 days ago, but no one has responded to communications. Arova waved his hand dismissively. Ignore it. We have a schedule to keep. The princess must reach Veloci Prime on time. There could be survivors, Hannah said. She had entered the bridge quietly and stood near the door. We should investigate. Should not delay our mission for strangers, Rova insisted. Taiho stepped forward. Captain, may I see the sensor data? Doyan nodded and moved aside. Taiho examined the readings on the screen. His face showed nothing, but Yura saw his shoulders tighten just slightly. We should investigate, Taiho said quietly. But carefully? Why? Rova demanded. What do you see that we do not? Taiho turned to face him. The ship's power is completely dead. No life support. No engines. No lights. But the distress beacon is still active. That beacon runs on a separate battery. If it activated 3 days ago, the ship has been dead for much longer. So, perhaps their reactor failed. Perhaps... Taiho paused. But if the reactor failed gradually, they would have sent a proper distress call. A message. Something. This beacon is automatic. It activated because everyone on board was already gone. Suddenly, without warning, the bridge was silent. Yura felt cold spread through her chest. Captain Duyon made the decision. They would investigate. 2 hours later, the horizon drift floated beside the dead ship. It was a trading vessel, similar in size to their own. The hull was intact. The windows were dark. Nothing moved. A small team boarded the wreck. Rova insisted on leading, bringing 2 of his guards. Taiho went as well, along with Minho. Yura demanded to join them. She was curious, and she refused to show fear in front of the humans. The inside of the dead ship was wrong. Yura knew it the moment she stepped through the airlock. The air was stale and tasted like old metal. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the walls, and there was silence. Complete, total silence. They moved through the corridors slowly. Rova led the way, his weapon drawn. His guards flanked him. Taiho and Minho walked at the back, their eyes scanning everything. They found the first body in the cargo bay. It was a crew member, species unknown. He lay on the floor, his chest torn open. The wounds were not from weapons. They were from claws. Large claws? Something had ripped him apart with terrible strength. Rova's guards shifted nervously. What could do this? One asked. Taiho knelt beside the body. He examined the wounds closely. His face was calm, but Yura saw his jaw tighten. These marks, he said quietly. The spacing. The depth. The angle of attack. He stood and looked at Minho. Something passed between them. A silent understanding. What is it? Yura demanded. What killed this man? Taiho did not answer her. Instead, he walked to the cargo bay wall and ran his fingers along a series of deep scratches in the metal. Claw marks. 5 claws spread wide, digging through solid steel like it was soft wood. "We need to leave," Taiho said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it now. "We need to leave right now," Rova laughed. "You are frightened by some scratches? I expected no better from a human. Whatever creature did this is long gone. We are safe." "No," Taiho said. "We are not." He turned to face the group. "These marks are from a Krath hunting pack. This is their territory. And if we can see their kills, they can see us." Yura had heard of the Krath. Everyone had. They were monsters from the Outer Rim. Massive hunters with 6 limbs and natural armor. They treated every other species as prey, but they were rare. They stayed in the deep dark spaces between stars. "Impossible," Rova said. "The Krath do not hunt this close to civilized space." "They hunt wherever they want," Taiho replied. "And they are patient. They wait, they watch. They learn their prey's weaknesses." His dark eyes found Yura's face, and then they strike. As if his words had summoned them, the ship's sensors suddenly screamed with proximity alerts. 3 small vessels were approaching fast. Too fast to run from. Too fast to hide. The Krath had found them, and the hunt was about to begin. The alarms were screaming. Red lights flashed through every corridor of the horizon drift. Yura ran toward the bridge, with her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. 3 Krath boarding pods had attached to their ship 3. The metal groaned as the predators cut through. The hull with tools designed for exactly this purpose. They had done this many times before. They knew exactly how to crack open a ship like a shell and reach the soft prey inside. Commander Rova was shouting orders. His guards took positions in the main corridor, weapons raised, eyes wide with something that might have been fear but was dressed up as courage. "Hold the line," Rova commanded. "They are just animals. Our weapons will destroy them." Yura wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the mighty Velasi military could handle this threat. Her people had conquered worlds. They had built an empire across 100 star systems. Surely they could defeat some primitive hunters. Then the first Krath came through the breach. It was massive. 3 meters tall, when it stood upright, with 6 limbs and armor-like skin, the color of dried blood. Its head was flat and wide, with rows of teeth and 4 black eyes that saw everything. It moved with terrible speed, flowing through the opening like water made of muscle and hate. The Velasi guards opened fire. Energy bolts struck the Krath's chest, its arms, its head. The creature barely slowed down. It hit the first guard before he could even scream. One swipe of its claws opened him from shoulder to hip. The second guard tried to run. The Krath caught him by the head and squeezed. The sound was something Yura would never forget. 2 more Krath came through behind the first, then 3 more from another breach point. The ship was being invaded from multiple directions, and the Veloci defense was falling apart in seconds. "Fall back," Rova screamed. His voice had lost its arrogance. Now, it was pure terror. "Everyone fall back to the bridge." Yura ran. She was not ashamed of it. There was nothing else to do. The Kraths were everywhere, moving through the corridors like nightmares given flesh. Their roars shook the walls. The screams of dying crew members echoed through the ship. She turned a corner and nearly crashed into Taiho. He was standing in the middle of the corridor, completely still. Minho was beside him, and Hannah stood slightly behind. They were not running. They were not hiding. They were waiting. "What are you doing?" Yura shouted. "We have to get to the bridge. We have to escape." Taiho looked at her. Something had changed in his eyes. The tired cargo handler was gone. The mask had fallen away. What remained was something older, something harder, something that had been forged in fire and blood. "There is no escape," he said calmly. "The Krath will hunt us through the vents, through the walls, through every hiding place on this ship. Running only delays the inevitable. Then what do we do?" Taiho smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We stop running. We start hunting." He reached behind a wall panel and pulled out a case that had been hidden there. Inside were weapons. Not energy weapons like the Veloci used. These were different. Blades with edges that gleamed under the emergency lights. Small devices that Minho took and immediately began activating. Tools of death that had no business being on a simple merchant ship. "You prepared for this?" Yura whispered. "We prepare for everything," Minho said. His voice was flat, calm, professional. "It is how we survive." Taiho handed Yura a small blade. "Stay behind us. Do not run. Do not scream. If something gets past us, aim for the eyes and the joints. Those are the weak points." Before she could respond, a Krath appeared at the end of the corridor. It saw them and let out a hunting cry that made Yara's bones vibrate. It charged, all 6 limbs, propelling it forward like a living missile. Taiho moved. Yura had seen fast creatures before. She had seen trained warriors and hunting beasts from a dozen worlds. But she had never seen anything move like Taiho moved now. He did not run away from the Krath. He ran toward it. At the last moment, he dropped low, sliding under the creature's reaching claws. His blade came up in a silver arc, cutting through the soft tissue behind the Krath's front knee. The creature's leg buckled. Taiho was already behind it, striking again, his blade finding the gap between armor plates at the base of the spine. The Krath fell. It was not dead, but it could no longer move. It roared in fury and confusion. No prey had ever fought back like this. No prey had ever known where to strike. Taiho stood over it. "Your kind hunted us once," he said quietly. "Millions of years ago, things like you hunted my ancestors. Do you know what happened to them?" The Krath snarled. "We ate them," Taiho said. "We hunted them back until there were none left. We became the thing that monsters fear." He ended the creature's life with a single strike to the brainstem. More Krath were coming. Yura could hear them in the walls, in the vents, closing in from every direction. But Taiho did not seem afraid. Neither did Minho or Hannah. Minho placed one of his devices on the wall. "Fire in the hole," he said calmly. The explosion collapsed the corridor behind them, sealing off one approach. The Krath howled in frustration. "That's what Taiho said. We funnel them into kill zones. We take them apart piece by piece, and they move through the ship like ghosts." Yura followed, clutching her small blade, trying to understand what she was seeing. The humans were not fighting like soldiers. They were fighting like predators. Every step was planned. Every position was chosen. They knew exactly where the Krath would go and were always waiting for them. 2 more Krath fell to Taiho's blade. Another died when Minho's trap collapsed a ceiling onto its head. Hannah dragged wounded crew members to safety, but when a Krath got too close, she moved with the same deadly precision as the others. Her blade found its eye. Her second strike found its throat. They were not running anymore. The Krath were. Yura watched one of the creatures hesitate at a corridor junction. It had seen its packmates die. It had faced prey that refused to act like prey. For the first time in its existence, the Krath was uncertain. Taiho stepped into the corridor. He did not hold his weapon ready. He simply stood there and looked at the Krath, and then he made a sound. It was a low rumble deep in his chest. Not a word. Not a scream. Something more primal. A growl that spoke of ancient hunts of millions of years of survival, of a species that had conquered its own death world through sheer refusal to die. The Krath understood that sound. It recognized it. It was the sound of an apex predator claiming territory. The creature backed away. Yura stood frozen. Watching the massive hunter retreat from a human who was half its size, everything she knew, everything she had believed, crumbled in that moment. Humans were not prey. They had never been prey. They were something far more dangerous. Something that the galaxy had forgotten to fear, and now the Krath were remembering. The hunt had reversed, through the dark corridors of the Horizon Drift. The Kraths were no longer the predators. They had become prey, and they did not understand how this had happened. Their pack had boarded the ship expecting easy kills. They had found something else entirely. Taiho led the small group through the ship's lower levels. Minho walked beside him, setting traps at every junction. Hannah brought up the rear, helping the wounded crew members who had survived the initial attack. Commander Rova was with them now, his 4 eyes wide with shock, his earlier arrogance completely destroyed.
How is this be?
How is this possible? Rova whispered. Humans are classified as a non-threat species. Your world is primitive. Your technology is basic. How can you fight like this? Tai-Ho did not slow down as he answered. Our world is not primitive, Commander. It is a death world. Everything on Earth is designed to kill. The plants are poisonous. The animals are predators. The weather destroys cities. The ground shakes and splits open. Even the water is filled with creatures that eat flesh. And your species survived this? We did more than survive. Minho was attaching another explosive to a wall panel. We conquered it. We hunted the hunters. We ate the predators. We turned the entire planet into our territory. Rova fell silent. He looked at the humans with new eyes, seeing them for the first time as they truly were. Princess Yura walked close to Tai-Ho. Her mind was still struggling to accept what she had witnessed. She had seen him kill 3 Krath with nothing but a blade. She had watched him make a hunting monster retreat in fear. This was not possible. This should not be possible. What are you really? She asked quietly. You are not just a cargo handler. No, Tai-Ho admitted. I was part of a special unit. We called ourselves the Predator Corps. Our job was to survive on death worlds and eliminate threats that normal soldiers could not handle. Why did you leave? Tai-Ho was silent for a long moment. Because we were too good at our job. We became something that frightened the people we were protecting. So we disappeared. We scattered across the galaxy, taking quiet jobs, hiding what we were, until now. A new sound echoed through the ship. It was different from the roars of the other Krath. Deeper, more powerful. The walls themselves seemed to shake with its fury. Minho's face went pale. The pack leader? He has come aboard personally. Among the Krath, the pack leader was called He Who Ends. He was the largest, the strongest, the most intelligent of their kind. He had led 100 successful hunts across the galaxy. No prey had ever escaped him. No creature had ever defeated him in combat. He Who Ends had heard of the deaths of his packmates. He had felt their terror through the psychic bond that all Krath shared, and he had come to face whatever monster was killing his hunters. The creature emerged into the main cargo bay. He was enormous, nearly 4 meters tall, with armor plating so thick that it looked like stone. His 6 eyes burned with ancient intelligence. His claws had torn through warship hulls. His roar had silenced worlds. Tai-Ho stood alone in the center of the cargo bay, waiting for him. Human, He Who Ends spoke. His voice was like grinding rocks, deep and terrible. You have killed many of my pack. You have done what no prey has ever done. I am curious. I will give you the honor of speaking before I end you. Tai-Ho did not show fear. He did not step back. He simply looked up at the massive predator and said, Your kind made a mistake. You assumed we were prey because we looked weak, because we smiled, because we built things instead of hunting. You forgot the most important rule of the universe. What rule? Never judge a predator by its size. Tai-Ho's grip tightened on his blade. We have a saying on Earth. There is always a bigger fish. Tonight, I am that fish. He Who Ends laughed. The sound filled the cargo bay like thunder. Bold words from such a small thing. But words mean nothing. Only strength matters. The Krath Lord charged. He was fast. Impossibly fast for something so large. His claws cut through the air where Tai-Ho had been standing a heartbeat before. But Tai-Ho was no longer there. He had moved, flowing around the attack like water around stone. The fight became a blur of motion. He Who Ends was stronger, larger, and had natural armor that could stop bullets. Tai-Ho had none of these advantages. But he had something else. He had millions of years of evolutionary wisdom encoded in his DNA. The instincts of a persistence hunter. The patience of a species that had learned to chase prey for hours, for days. until it collapsed from exhaustion. Taeho did not try to overpower the Krath. He wore him down. Every attack from Hyoen's left an opening. Taeho exploited each one, his blade finding gaps in the armor, cutting tendons, piercing soft tissue. None of the wounds were fatal, but they added up. Blood dripped from a dozen cuts. The Krath's movements grew slower. His attacks became wilder, more desperate. "What are you?" Hyoen's roared. "You should be dead. You should have died 10 times over." "I am human," Taeho said. His breath was ragged. His body was covered in his own wounds, but he did not fall. And we do not die easily. We fought ice ages that froze our world. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We conquered every predator on our planet. We even fought each other with weapons that could destroy cities. And we are still here. Hyoen's lunged again. This time, Taeho did not dodge. He stepped forward into the attack and drove his blade upward with all his remaining strength. The blade found its target, the primary heart. Every species had a weak point, and Taeho knew exactly where the Krath's was hidden. The blade pierced the armor from below, angling through ribs that were designed to protect against frontal attacks, not attacks from something small enough to slip underneath. Hyoen's made a sound that was not a roar. It was a gasp, a question. "How?" "Your armor protects you from equals," Taeho said, pushing the blade deeper. "But my ancestors learned to kill things bigger than us before we even had fire. We are small. We are weak. And that is why we learned to be deadly." The pack leader fell. The greatest hunter of the Krath, the monster that had ended 10,000 lives, died on the floor of a cargo bay with a human's blade in his heart. Taeho stood over the body for a long moment. Then his legs gave out and he collapsed beside his kill. Yura ran to him. Hannah was already there, pulling out medical supplies, working to stop the bleeding from his many wounds. "He will live," Hannah said. Her voice was calm, professional. "He has survived worse." Yura looked at the dead Krath Lord. Then she looked at the small, broken human who had killed him. She felt something shift inside her. Every belief she had held about strength and weakness was rebuilding itself around a new truth. Through the ship's speakers, they heard the sounds of the remaining Krath retreating. Their boarding pods were detaching. They were fleeing. For the first time in their species' history, Kraths were running from prey, and the galaxy would never be the same. The horizon. Drift limped through space like a wounded animal. Half of its systems were damaged. Entire sections were sealed off due to hull breaches. The crew worked constantly to keep the ship moving, to keep them alive long enough to reach safe harbor. But they were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. Princess Yura sat in the medical bay beside Taeho's bed. Hannah had worked through the night, stitching his wounds, treating the internal bleeding,
fighting to save the man
who had saved them all. Now he lay still, wrapped in bandages, sleeping the deep sleep of someone whose body was desperately trying to heal. Yira watched his face. In sleep, he looked ordinary again. Young even. Just a tired man with calloused hands. Not a warrior. Not a predator. Just human. She did not understand how both things could be true at the same time, Commander. Rova entered the medical bay quietly. He had changed since the attack. His arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like humility. Perhaps even shame. "Princess," he said softly. "I wanted to speak with you." "About what?" Rova looked at Taeho's sleeping form. "I have been a soldier for 30 years. I have fought in wars across the Empire. I thought I understood combat. I thought I understood strength. I was wrong." Yura nodded slowly. "We both were. I sent a formal apology to the human crew. All of them. I asked them to forgive my words and actions." Rova straightened his back. "I also asked the engineer Minho if he would teach me. Not to fight like them. I know that is impossible. But to understand how they think, how they survive." "What did he say?" "He said yes." Rova almost smiled. "He said respect flows both ways now. And that learning goes both ways too." Yura was surprised. But she understood. The battle had changed everyone on the ship. Old assumptions had been destroyed. New understanding was growing in their place. After Rova left, Yura returned to her quarters and accessed the Imperial database. She had clearance to view classified files, information that most citizens of the Empire would never see. She searched for everything the Velasi knew about humans. What she found terrified her. The files called Earth a Class 12. Death World, the highest classification. A planet so dangerous that it should not have produced intelligent life at all. The reports described creatures that swam through the water with rows of teeth, animals that could run faster than any Velasi, insects that killed millions, plants that produced poison, bacteria that could destroy entire populations. And in the middle of all this death, humans had emerged, soft, slow, weak in every measurable way. They should have been eaten within a generation. Instead, they had conquered everything. The files describe something called persistence hunting. Humans were not fast, so they simply followed their prey for hours, for days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. They could not overpower larger creatures, so they invented tools and traps and strategies. They could not survive the cold, so they took the skins of dead animals and wore them. Every weakness became a reason to adapt, to improve. To find another way to survive, the files also mentioned something called the Predator Extinction Event. In ancient times, Earth had been home to massive predators that should have driven humans to extinction. Instead, humans had hunted those predators until every single one was dead. They had not just survived, they had erased their competitors from existence. Yura closed the files. Her hands were shaking. She returned to the medical bay and found Tai-Ho awake. He was sitting up, drinking water slowly, his face pale but alert. "You have been reading about us," he said. It was not a question. Yura sat down across from him. "I needed to understand." "And do you?" "Understand?" "I think so." She looked into his dark eyes. "You conquered Earth not because you were the strongest or the fastest. You won because you simply refused to die. Because every obstacle made you more dangerous. Because giving up is not in your nature." Tai-Ho smiled faintly. "That is close enough to the truth. Why did you hide it? Why did you pretend to be weak?" Tai-Ho was quiet for a moment. He set down his water and looked at his hands. "There is a cost to being what we are, Princess. Other species fear us when they learn the truth. They attack us, trying to eliminate the threat before we grow too strong. Or they try to use us as weapons, as soldiers for their own wars. Either way, we lose. So you hide. So we hide. We work quiet jobs. We keep our heads down. We let other species believe they are superior. It is safer that way. For everyone." Yura thought about this. She thought about all the times she had mocked humans. All the times other Veloci had treated them as lesser beings. And she realized that the humans had allowed it. They had chosen to be underestimated rather than feared. It was the ultimate survival strategy. The ship arrived at Veloci Prime 5 days later. News of the Krath attack had already spread. News of the human who had killed the pack leader had spread even faster. When the Horizon Drift docked, there were crowds waiting. Officials, reporters, military commanders, all wanting to see the humans who had done the impossible. Tai-Ho did not enjoy the attention. He answered questions politely, accepted thanks with grace, and disappeared back to the ship as soon as he could. Minho and Hannah did the same. They were not interested in fame. They just wanted to return to their quiet lives, but the galaxy had noticed them now. The galaxy would remember. Princess Yura made a formal request through the imperial bureaucracy. She asked for a human security detail to accompany her on all future travels. When her father demanded to know why, she told him the truth. "Because I finally understand," she said. "Humans were not pretending to be weak. They were being kind enough to let us believe we were strong. I want people like that protecting me." The request was approved. On the day before Yura was scheduled to leave for her next diplomatic mission, she found Tai-Ho in the cargo bay of the Horizon Drift. He was loading crates again. Back to his quiet work. Back to his hidden life. You could be an admiral, she said. A general. You could have anything you want. The Empire would give you power, wealth, honor. Tai-Ho lifted a heavy crate and set it in place. Admirals give orders from safe rooms. Generals plan wars from distant headquarters. That is not what I am. Then what are you? He turned to face her. For just a moment, she saw the predator behind his eyes. The ancient killer that lived inside every human, sleeping until it was needed. I'm the one who makes sure the people beside me survive, he said. That is enough. Yura nodded slowly. She understood now. True strength did not need titles or recognition. True strength simply existed, doing what needed to be done, protecting those who needed protection. She left him to his work. As she walked away, she passed a group of Veloci officials. They were reading a new report from Imperial Intelligence. The report announced that the species classification for humans had been updated. The old classification, non-threat level 3, had been removed. The new classification read simply, Apex Predator. Do not provoke. Yura smiled to herself. The galaxy was finally learning what she had discovered in the dark corridors of a merchant ship. Humans were not prey. They never had been. And the universe would be wise to remember that.